Good evening, and welcome to the council meeting of April 24th, 2023. The meeting is being live streamed on YouTube, and the most up-to-date meeting package is on the Town of Kentville website. We regret our delay, however, we're doing an operational budget just prior to this. This meeting is called to order. Have all of the councillors received and reviewed their meeting packages? Does any member of council have information pertaining to a matter before this council which has not been publicly circulated? I will remind members of council that we are in decision-making mode and we should be mindful of our decision-making wheel. We have committed to making balanced and respectful decisions and adhering to our code of conduct. This council, through policy and by motion, has adopted Robert's rules as our rules of order, our parliamentary procedure. We will be voting by electronic means on all votes except administrative. And are there any conflict of interest issues we should be aware of before the meeting commences? The chair notes that Councillor Maxwell has sent regrets due to illness. However, we do have quorum. We have been provided with a proposed agenda. And CAO, I understand you have a few changes to the agenda.
Thank you, Mayor Snow. So council will acknowledge that in their package was the minutes from the council special meeting of April 17th. So you don't see that on the agenda. So I would recommend that we would add item 3B. So that would be council, special council meeting, April 17th. And then there is also a in-camera item 9A, which would be personnel.
Thank you, CAO. Councillor Huntley has made a request to add an RFD to the agenda. Council, how say you? All those in favor? Those opposed? And the motion is carried. The item will be added to the agenda as new business item 6D. Are there any further changes to the agenda? All right, if I could have a motion to adopt the agenda as amended, please. Thank you. Deputy Mayor for the second, thank you. All those in favor? Those opposed? The motion is carried. Thank you. You have been circulated the minutes of the March 27th, 2023 council meeting for review. If there are no changes, the minutes are approved as distributed. If there are changes, the recording secretary will annotate those. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship. Under section 4A, the code of conduct, I think the reading there should read differently. So I'm just going to suggest what it should read. As opposed to what is, so it says Deputy Mayor took the chair. Deputy Mayor Savage gave an outline of the code of conduct breach against Mayor Snow. Mayor Snow did not give a statement. Mayor Snow took the chair. So I had written down here, Deputy Mayor Savage referred to the determination that Snow breached the code of conduct and then provided Mayor Snow with an opportunity to speak. And further, she stated that she had nothing to say as opposed to not giving a statement.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Clerk, you got that?
Yes.
All right. Thank you. So that is changed. Is there any other change to that? None? All right, moving on to our special council meeting minutes of April the 17th. That would have been our capital budget. Are there any changes to those minutes as circulated? None? All right, we'll move right along. So we now have business arising, and our recommendation, the first thing on the docket is our 2023-2024 Town of Kentville capital budget. At the meeting, we laid this on the table. So council met on April 17th for a presentation of a revised draft capital budget. The revision was based on details provided by council at the February 21st budget meeting. The council requested further information on debt affordability and by consent laid the decision on the table until this meeting. The debt affordability model was sent to council on Friday, April 21st for consideration. It demonstrates that the town of Kentville has capacity to borrow and our affordability sits at 7.4%. So the motion that was on the table at the time is that council approve the 2023-28 Town of Kentville Capital Investment Plan, the capital budget, in the amount of $6,605,900, including the funding sources. And further, that council approves the future years 2024-25 to 2027-28 in principle, including the funding sources. 24-25 was $7,481,600. 25-26 was $5,648,501. 2026-27 was $3,436,013. And 2027-2028 was $7,160,000. The motion was made by Councillor Gerard and Councillor Huntley. Therefore, it has been moved and seconded that CAC recommend approval to council of the 2023-2024 Town of Kentville capital budget in the amount of $6,605,900, including the funding sources. And further, that council approves the future years 2024-25 to 2027-28 in principle, including the funding sources. 2024-25 is $7,481,600. 2025-26 is $5,648,501. 2026-27 is $3,436,013. 2027-28 is $7,160,000. And the floor is now open for discussion. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship. So at the last meeting, there were a couple of items, and I just thought maybe the CAO might want to comment on those. We talked about Cornwallis Street sidewalk, and then there was also some minor upgrades to the Heritage Center.
Thank you. So we have not had an opportunity to do a full cost analysis with regards to the Cornwallis Street sidewalk. What I'd recommend to council is similar how we looked at an item throughout the year this year for additional work to come back with a costing. It gives council the opportunity then to look at if they're looking to do some in-year changes or if it's an item that they would like to see included kind of in the next capital budget. It is one of those pieces where this is not a quick fix that is there, that this would be a more extensive repair and is going to need a little bit of analysis around not just the concrete surface, but the bed underneath it and so on in order to come back with an accurate number for council. The second item with regards to conversations around the Heritage Center, I think it's one of those things where I think council should be looking at, they do have other buildings that are utilized by third parties. And in fact, we do have a lease coming up on the Lions Club, which is coming before council next month. So I think it's a good opportunity for council to actually look at some of these side by side and look at it from a perspective of, do they want different kinds of leases out there? Do they want different expenditure models? And if yes, fine. If no, then create consistency between those groups. So I'd recommend that that particular item come forward at CAC for a bigger discussion alongside some of the other assets that are out there that the town has with third parties.
Okay, thank you, because last year, back to the Cornwallis sidewalk, we did some upgrades around Klondike and things like that that we fit in, and
Yep.
so those are opportunities
Yep.
throughout the year, notwithstanding they're underneath.
Correct.
That we have to look at. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Zabian.
Thank you. Just wondering if we know what our reserve funds are going to be projected to look like as of March 31st, 2024.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I had that in my package last time we were here. Let me just see if I can dig that out.
Okay.
I know that so I'm gonna give you some round numbers. I know our capital reserve drops from, I think it was so we went down to 1.3, which was about 300,000 less than what we saw last year. And the operational reserve actually stays fairly static, and I'm gonna say it's around 1.7. I can get you the exact numbers, but ballpark, that's where we were.
Okay.
And so really at this point in time, the current budget would continue to put forward into the capital reserve at levels which we would normally see. And with the idea, and as per the conversation, that there's, future assets that some of those capital reserves would be used for, as well as, for lack of a better word, a rainy day fund for council should something come up that they would ever need.
So, thank you. So you're thinking the end of next year, those numbers would be around the same, roughly?
I would anticipate they'd be roughly the same. The only thing that would be different is, as we spoke at the earlier meeting tonight, where there's some additional reserves for things like King's Transit and whatnot that will, while they're being really set up as operational reserves, which is a little different than what we've seen in the past, those would sit on our books but would be very much earmarked to a third party. So you might actually see some growth in the reserve, but it very much would be targeted.
Okay, thank you. And I just have a couple of comments. I had said this at the last meeting. I'm not gonna support this budget because we're borrowing. Our borrowing is 3 times what we typically do. I'm not comfortable with that, and I'm not gonna repeat that again. The other thing is, with regards to the Heritage Center, I don't really like where this is going, because we've been now 2.5 years on this council, and for at least 2 years, they've asked for the same repairs, and it just seems to be, we're passing it along to the next thing, and I'm very unclear what the costs are there. They're gonna be minimal, I guess, when you look at what needs to be done. I've been over and looked at them a couple of times, and I think that should be included in the budget, because one thing I've learned in my 2.5 years here, if it's not on paper, and I don't just mean for budget, if it's not written down, things just don't always happen. So I would strongly urge that be put into the budget as a line item, and that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on this matter? Are you ready for the question? The question is that council approve the 2023-2024 Town of Kentville capital budget in the amount of $6,605,900, including the funding sources. And further, that council approves the future years 2024, 2025 to 2027, 2028 in principle, including the funding sources. 2024-25 is $7,481,600. 2025-26 is $5,648,501. 26-27 is $3,436,013. 2027-2028 is $7,160,000. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed. And the motion is carried. Thank you. Our next item is the McDougall Heights rezoning application update, CAO, based on the briefing note presented to council at CAC on April 11th. There has been further correspondence from the planner. Can you please update council on that information?
Thank you, Mayor Snow. So we did receive just some follow-up from the original documentation. In your package is the report that was presented to council from CAC from Kirsten Duncan. And what Kirsten is going to be doing is taking the information received from the planner, making sure that any further information that would be required from Public Works and so on would come into a report that would make its way to CAC. Anticipation at CAC, what we would be doing at that point in time would be bringing a complete report with recommendation from staff to council, and giving the opportunity then to have a public information session coming out of that. So this essentially would wrap up the pieces of information that would be coming to council for them to be able to determine if they would be moving then to first reading.
All right, thank you. And questions? Councillor Zabian, directly to CAO, please.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Snow. CEO, I'm just wondering, the document that we received from Carolyn Robertson 2 weeks ago, I'm having trouble understanding it, and it could just be the way I'm looking at it. It looks like it wasn't sent to the town of Kentville. And because there's some redactions there, and it was addressed to somebody, so there's somebody it's been sent to, and then on the first line, it says, as you know, blacked out, somebody asked me to review it, so there's two parties there, I'm very confused.
Okay.
If you could, if we can see the original, or you can explain who these two people are, I guess.
So it's actually quite simple, Counselor. So I mentioned that there was a very senior planner actually who was involved in McDougall Heights in its day. His name is Morris Lloyd. And so what happened is we had conversations with Mr. Lloyd as well as an architect who does work with him. Erroneously, the package had ended up being sent under them as their name, although it was coming to the town. So we spoke to them first. They were beginning to look at this, and this is when C+D as a planning consultant became available to us and then began doing the work. So it was just an error on their part in that it came through and it actually had the names of the original individuals on that. And of course, what you're going to see is all the planning documents that have come since will be directly to the town. So we just took that out of there because in essence, it was an error. And, but those are the parties that were involved in it.
So, sorry, one party was the Maurice guy.
And we had, so there was a architectural firm.
Okay.
Who, was, working with Mr. Lloyd. And so their names were on that document and therefore they were taken off because it was a mistake.
Okay, so it's the architectural firm and Maurice.
Correct.
Those are the two names. that
You
are
got
listed. Okay, thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship. So because we're asking for additional information, or potentially asking for additional information from the developer, does that restart the 120 days again, or could it restart?
I think what our intention is at this point is that so first of all, we just have a more concise document that's come from the planner.
Okay.
So our staff will want to obviously weigh in with their perspective on this.
Okay.
Clearly, there would be some elements of the information we've received from the applicant that would weigh into this as well.
Okay.
With the ideas that just simply this is, for lack of a better word, a final comprehensive document that then council can determine if they would like to have the information session and if they'd like to go to first reading.
Thank you.
Councillor York.
Thank you. For my own clarification, can you give me a ballpark date on where we land on the 120th day? What day is that?
Well, so in essence, remember the 120 day is actually about holding the public session. So it's not about when council needs to make their decision.
Okay.
So once you determine that an application is complete, you essentially have that 120 day window to make sure that any input from the public is completed. So council would hold, essentially we're talking here about having a session that gives full input from the public, much larger likely than what you would receive in a regular council meeting. And essentially that is then that input that council can determine in making its decision. So the 120 day window is only about making sure that public consultation date is held and then that information is passed on to council.
Thank you.
Is there anything further on that matter? All right, then we're moving on to our recommendations and reports. And our recommendations arising from the CAC meeting on April 11th will be presented by Councillor Gerard. Councillor Gerard, you have the mic.
Thank you, Your Worship. Let's see here. We'll do each one separately?
Yes,
I assume?
please.
Okay. At the April 11th, 2023 meeting of Council Advisory Committee, CAO Troke reviewed the committees of council policy and the need to update committees outlined in this policy and some minor administrative edits. Council Advisory Committee recommends that council review and approve the attached revisions to policy statement G57 to include a section on the Heritage Committee. I so move.
Thank you, and a seconder, please. Deputy Mayor, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that council approve the revision to the policy statement G57 to include the Heritage Committee. Is there any discussion on this matter? Are you ready for the question? The question is on...
If I can interrupt just before you go to the question. There was some back and forth between myself and staff over this, and I don't know what's before council this evening, but perhaps there could be confirmation as to, because I understood that the changes to the committees was coming off the agenda.
So what has happened, Solicitor, is on your advice, only the changes that you advised that we make are going forward. So the second recommendation on the Planning Advisory Committee is not going forward because that is not in play. But we are moving the Accessibility Committee out of ad hoc into a standing committee because it is currently a standing committee. And I believe
So
we
I
can
don't
do
want to
that.
get into the nature of legal advice in this public forum, but I just want to raise that I have not reviewed this version because I was told it was coming off the agenda. So I just want to say that for the record.
Okay, thank you. So are you ready for the question? The question is on approval of the motion to recommend approval of the revision of the policy statement G57 to include the Heritage Committee. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed, and the motion is carried. And Councillor, before you proceed, we'll just say that we did have advice not to go forward with the Planning Advisory Committee, so that is no longer there. Instead, it would be to move the Accessibility Committee details from ad hoc to standing, so they don't change. And the copy of the policy that you were provided in your package is reflective of the motions that we are making. So the motion would be that council approve the revision to policy statement G57 on the Accessibility Committee. And if you would move that.
I would move that.
Thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Huntley, thank you. So it has been moved and seconded that council approve the revision to the policy statement G57 on the Accessibility Committee. Is there any discussion on this matter? So nothing changed other than to move it out of ad hoc into a standing committee. As you know, our intent was always that as we started up committees, that we would put them in ad hoc, and if they remained ad hoc, then they'd fall off the edge when the job was done. If the job got bigger and continued, then they would move into standing committees. Deputy Mayor.
You've answered my question.
Okay, very
you.
good. All right, so are you ready? Oh, Councillor York, sorry,
Thank
go ahead.
you. And perhaps now is not the time, if we're just talking about the Kentville Inclusion and Access Committee, the rest of the policy can be discussed at a different time?
That's correct,
Perfect. Okay.
after we have a full review. Yes,
Perfect. Okay, thank you very much.
thank you. All right, is there anything further before we move on the question? No, Councillor Gerard is he's my talker.
Oh, sorry.
Leave me alone.
The question is on approval of the motion to approve the revision to policy statement G57 on the Accessibility Committee. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed, and the motion is carried. Thank you.
Moving on. April 24th, 2023, the urban forest policy. A draft of the urban forest policy was brought to Council Advisory Committee on April the 11th, 2023. The intention was to bring this to council on April 24th, 2023 for review and approval. Staff have been in discussion with the solicitor about this policy. They have determined that verbiage around urban forests in the existing Municipal Government Act provides sufficient guidance on this matter. It was determined that a policy is not required on this issue and will not be brought to council.
Thank you. Is there any, if there are any questions to the CAO on that one? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship. So I guess what precipitated the thought that we would need a policy around urban forest?
So there was a lot of interactions that were happening between folks and both Recreation and Public Works. Staff were coming forward looking for guidance on different elements of it. So we thought that by attempting to expand the policy, it might create some clarity for those unique situations. However, you can't comprehensively get every situation. And so this is when we began to look at the default in the MGA as being as good as what we felt we needed in order to resolve any issues that would come forward.
Thank you.
Counselor?
At the April 11th, 2023 meeting of Council Advisory Committee, CAO Troke explained the vacancy in the Heritage Committee and asked council for an appointment. Councillor Kathy Maxwell was elected to sit on this committee. Council Advisory Committee recommends that council appoint Councillor Kathy Maxwell to sit on the Heritage Committee. I so move.
Thank you. Seconder? Counselor Huntley, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that council appoint Councillor Kathy Maxwell to the Heritage Committee. Is there any discussion on this matter? There being no discussion, are you ready for the question? The question is that council appoint Councillor Kathy Maxwell to the Heritage Committee. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed, and the motion is carried. Thank you.
At the April 11th, 2023 meeting of Council Advisory Committee, CAO Troke described the area rate presented by the Kentville Volunteer Fire Department for 0.0397 per $100 of assessed value for all occupancies to which the rate applies, compared to last year's rate of 0.0378. Council Advisory Committee recommends that council accept the requested area rate for Kentville Volunteer Fire Department. I so move.
Thank you. Seconder? Councillor Zabian, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that council approve the 0.0397 area fire rate as set at the Kentville Volunteer Fire Department ratepayers meeting. Is there any discussion on this matter? There being no discussion, are you ready for the question? The question is that council approve the 0.0397 area fire rate as set at the Kentville Volunteer Fire Department ratepayers meeting. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed, and the motion is carried. Thank you.
Moving on, at the April 11th, 2023 meeting of Council Advisory Committee, CAO Troke outlined an application by Bill Denyer for a change to the warranty deed in his Kentville Business Park plot, which would see a slightly smaller building than originally proposed. Council Advisory Committee recommends that council approve the consideration in the reduction in building size and pavement area as outlined in the request from Indoor Air Solutions. I so move.
Seconder? Deputy Mayor, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that council approve the reduction in building size and pavement area size as outlined in the request from Indoor Air Solutions. Is there any discussion on this matter? There being no discussion, are you ready for the question? The question is that council approve the reduction in building size and pavement area size as outlined in the request from Indoor Air Solutions. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed. And the motion is carried.
Further to this meeting, the property owner has requested a 6-month extension on the development of the time frame to January 29th, 2024. See the attached letter. I guess the recommendation is that Council Advisory Committee or whoever, I guess I recommend that council approve a 6-month extension on the development on the time frame to January 29th, 2024. I so move.
Thank you. A seconder, please. Councillor Huntley, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that council approve a 6-month extension on the development time frame to January 29th, 2024, as requested by Indoor Air Solutions. Is there any discussion on this matter? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship. So I'm just reading the letter from Mr. Denyar about, so he was, and I'm sorry, I don't know this, he was to have how much completed by July 29th, 2023?
It would be the entire building.
The entire building?
Right. So what happens from purchase date, you have 24 months. And so basically, as part of your purchase, you include all your drawings and so on, and at which point you get a deed that states you have 24 months in order to complete the project. He has his components ordered and whatnot, and I understand that he just wants to make sure that he has a bit of a cushion in case he goes over the original date.
So in all likelihood, the building will be commenced?
I understand that he plans on starting to clear the lot immediately.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any further discussion on this matter? Are you ready for the question? The question is that council approve the 6-month extension on the development timeframe to January 29th, 2024, as requested by Indoor Air Solutions. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed. And the motion is carried. Thank you very much. All right, we move on to our councillor reports. Councillor Gerard.
Thank you, Your Worship. My apologies for not getting my report in on time to Jennifer. The last council meeting was March 27th. Last CAC was April 11th. The only thing that I had during that month was the capital budget meeting on the 17th. On April the 12th, I did receive news from John Shanks that I had been awarded cost in the conflict of interest lawsuit. And I guess the town and the town's insurance company were awarded $15,000. I have included the judge's decision if anybody wants to read it.
Thank you. Councillor Huntley.
Thank you. Committee meetings, I have attached information for diversity and Kings Remo. The special meeting was for capital budget draft, and there were 2 meetings canceled, Water Commission and the Valley Wren LOC. But the other meetings for my committees will be happening this week and later next week. A couple of the events were the Annapolis Valley Chamber Business Awards and the Dress the Affair event at the Kentville Fire Hall. I also had a meeting with Bryson Development and a couple of webinars and Zoom about climate benefits and Coady Institute. Excuse me. Rotary Luncheon, they talked a little bit about Enviro Club project, and I did the Rotary Luncheon twice, and they have great speakers there, and the last meeting I had was with community partners. So there was social innovation hosted by Groundworks, which what they try to do is bring partners together from all aspects, from accessibility to food security, and to see who can help who. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Maxwell's report is included in the package for your reading. And Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. So April the 12th was the Investment Advisory Committee, and our year-to-date performance summary is 2% versus the balanced income CAD of 3.68%. I just had a note there that it's important to keep in mind that our portfolio is not reacting to the markets quite like personal portfolios would due to our investment policy statement. The portfolio stands just shy of 13 million. It says 3. We did not lose 10 million. We have approximately 800,000 coming due in June and July of 2023, and we await what the market conditions look like at the time. But we have the revised investment policy statement, which gives us a little bit more flexibility. On March the 27th of 2023, we withdrew the $460,000 that's used for the operating budget, and that is a quite a sum of money that contributes to that operating budget on a per annum basis. March the 7th was REMO meeting, Regional Emergency Management, and I chair that committee. There's a number of items there, climate change risk report, Kings Remo Transit MOU, wildfire season, comfort centers, social media, vulnerable persons registry. It's always a very informative meeting, and lots of, Dan Stovall does an excellent job putting everything together. April the 17th was the budget meeting, final revisions to the capital budget. March the 25th was breakfast at the Anglican Church, which is always a nice breakfast. And March the 30th was the ABCC Business Awards dinner. And that is my report.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor York.
Thank you. Same council and CAC meetings as my colleagues. We had our Board of Police Commissioners meeting at the end of March, we had a great conversation and great debate back and forth. It's been a really engaging experience with the audience as well, so that's been helpful. We had our Kentville Inclusion and Access Committee. Lots of good discussions happening there, especially as it relates to the Cornwallis Street sidewalk, which has been mentioned this evening in terms of, but through an accessibility lens, which has been, it's been eye-opening for myself. So it's been a pleasure to work with that group of people as well. I had my first Annapolis Valley Regional Library Board meeting with the new CEO. So it was a really in-depth review of the year, a really in-depth review of where the library is now post-COVID, and really great conversations about what we can do as a board and as towns to move the library into the future and what that's going to look like for Kentville and the AVRL as a whole. It should be noted that the AVRL is one of the most active library boards in the province, so that's really encouraging to see. I had a couple of committee meetings, event meetings with KBC, and I had the opportunity to attend the Nova Scotia Association of Police Governance, the NSAPG. So we'll be having an AGM close to the Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities, NSFM, so that'll be happening at the beginning of May. And I also was able to attend a conference virtually about guaranteed basic incomes in Nova Scotia and how that could work and what that could look like for citizens in Nova Scotia. So that was a free to attend and virtual conference, so there was no cost incurred.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Zabia.
Thank you. I attended all the same meetings that my colleagues did. The only committee meeting I had this month, and I have a mistake here, it says March 3rd, but it was actually April 3rd. We met to discuss the newly formed Heritage Committee, and I'm happy to report I'll be chairing that. And I'm also pleased that Councillor Maxwell will be part of that as well, as it was her initiative for this committee to be created. And that's about it for committees. The only other thing, report my expenses for the year, which would be the whole year from March to March, was $505. Thank you.
Thank you. CEO, could you provide council with an update on the operational matters discussed 2 weeks ago at the CAC meeting?
Thank you very much. So really, it's been, as per our previous meeting, all budgets all the time. I really want to thank Director Matthews and Robin Page for all of their efforts. Robin, while she was acting in the role, but also in helping the new director transition into her role. As you can see by the documentation and by the work that came at the previous meeting, that the directors really come up to speed very, very fast in their new job. So I want to thank both of them, but also to the directors and other staff who are involved in this process. We certainly are going much deeper into the organization with kind of a bottom-up approach on building these budgets. So there's a lot of opportunity, not just for folks to get comfortable with a process, but to have a deeper understanding. So we're building the directors and leaders of this organization for the years to come. So really for me, I just am thankful for the folks who work here and all the good work they do. And I just want to say that all the stuff that you're seeing is my kudos to them they really make my job easy. So I want to thank them for everything they do.
Thank you, CAO. So moving on to my report, I was away for the council advisory meeting. So the last one I attended was 13th of March. The 27th of March, I had an NSFM special board meeting. Again, we were looking at decision-making rules, particularly as we negotiate the changes that are occurring due to our bylaw changes. The 27th of March was the council meeting, and the budget discussion is there. The 28th of March, I'm sitting in on the asset management conference planning meetings. They happen every other week on Tuesday. The conference will be held in Moncton in September, and it looks like it's going to be a really great conference again. 13th of April, Valley Wren Regional Economic Recovery Meeting. And again, this is where the mayors of the Wren catchment area get together and chat about what's going on in our towns. And I have to say that if we consider how much activity there is here in Kentville, our other municipalities are also feeling a lot of activity as well, and so it bodes very well for our region. On the 17th of April was a special council meeting for our capital investment plan, and always one of those great meetings as we look at what we invest in our town and how we get there doing it. The 19th of April was the Intermunicipal Service Agreement Board. Again, it was the monthly board meeting with updates from King's Transit and Valley Waste. And I guess rather than just throw a bunch of detail at you, I prefer to bring it in as the numbers make sense. So this evening, as we were doing our operational budget, I was bringing some of the numbers that we see at these meetings. That same evening, and it was in April of 2021, although that was the last time that we attended one, the food bank had a dinner for appreciation of their volunteers. And again, it was the first time that they had got together to do this appreciation dinner since COVID. It was a lovely dinner, of course, at the Anglican Church, turkey dinner, and there's nothing like turkey when someone else is cooking it, and it was absolutely delicious. On the other hand, food bank usage is up to an all-time high here. Our food bank is in very good shape. They have an amazing set of volunteers who do the work, and it may sound like there's just put a few things on the shelf and then hand out a few things and that's the end of it. But the pallets come in on Wednesday, and they put everything out and they make sure that it's available for folks, and it's just it's a well-oiled machine. So if you are looking for some place to contribute your volunteer hours, I would suggest that you have a visit because they're quite the group of folks. And as well, I attended an online Zoom call through Dalhousie University called Managing the Grid. We're supposed to get the slides this week, so when the slides come out, I will distribute them to council. And that is it for my report. So we move on now to new business, and our first matter for new business is with regards to the spring debenture issuance. So we do have a recommendation from our Director of Finance to pre-approve the debenture issuance as follows. TBR 222301 various in the amount of $333,500, and further TBR 222302 sanitary sewer at $230,000 for a total debenture of $563,500. And the motion is that council pre-approve the debenture issuance as follows. TBR 222301 various $333,500, and further TBR 222302 sanitary sewer at $230,000 for a total debenture of $563,500. If someone could move that, please. Deputy Mayor, thank you. And for the second, Councillor York. Thank you. Is there any discussion on this matter? Councillor York.
Do we know why various came in so low under the approved, or is it just a guess and that's just what we got? And we shouldn't really rock that boat?
No, so thank you. So typically what happens when we get the preliminary call, we would go into our asset management plan and ask for what essentially would be the full borrowing amount you would expect to want. And as time goes on, and I think not the last capital presentation, but the one before, I mentioned that, we are, and anywhere we can, get grants, get assistance, whatnot, we take it. But also as in cases where if an item we were purchasing came in under, great, then it's less money. So in this case here, once we were able to, and this was, again, our accounting team went through all of the billings with regards to the year to March 31st, and we essentially were successful in coming in substantially under budget, but also receiving various grants. And so when you see that number of 1.7 million, that would essentially been all of those borrowing items as of the date that we got the call from the province that we would have seen. And ultimately, at the end of the day, came in 1.2 million under that.
Great.
All right, is there anything further on this matter? Are you ready for the question? The question is on adoption of the motion to pre-approve debenture issuance as follows. TBR 222301, various, at $333,500, and further TBR 222302, sanitary sewer, at $230,000, for a total debenture of $563,500. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed. And the motion is carried. Thank you. All right, the next one is a request for decision, public comments, and based on discussion with members, citizens in the town of Kentville, I am going to respectfully withdraw this RFD. It comes down to the fact that more rules do not necessarily make for better meetings, and that it requires leadership to ensure that our rules that are currently followed. However, I will say that I do intend to continue to break the rule of a total of 10-minute public input, as both policies state, and permit citizens who stand up at the microphone to have 3 minutes each, rather than a single 10-minute time period. So I withdraw that request. The next matter is a recommendation to council that council approve the proposed date change for May council meeting to Tuesday, May 30th, vice Monday, May 29th, due to conference attendance by 3 members of council. And the motion would read that council approve the proposed date change for May council meeting to Tuesday, May 30th, vice Monday, May 29th. Someone could move that, please? Councillor Gerard, thank you. And for the second, Councillor Huntley, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that council approve the proposed date change for the May council meeting to Tuesday, May 30th, vice Monday, May 29th. Is there any discussion on this matter? There being no discussion, are you ready for the question? The question is that council approve the proposed date change for May council meeting to Tuesday, May 30th, vice Monday, May 29th. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed, and the motion is carried. Thank you very much. And our next matter was an addition to the agenda, and it's an RFD from Councillor Huntley. Councillor Huntley, did you wish to speak to your RFD?
Yes.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What I wanted to say was, there is an opportunity with FCM to put your name forward to be on the Board of Directors, and I would like the opportunity to do that. In saying that, there's some information that I feel will be pertinent to give you as around the horseshoe here tonight. So what I did was, I went back through, as you know, I was able to get on the standing committees with FCM, and I decided to make a list of all the meetings that we had and give you an update where they sat. So from December 5th to the 9th, there was the advocacy days. There was no cost to the town. February 23rd, there was an Atlantic Regional Caucus meeting. That was virtual. February 23rd, there was a standing committee on conference planning. That was virtual. March 7th, there was a rural forum meeting. That was virtual. March 8th, committee of the whole meeting. That was virtual. March 9th, board of directors meeting. That was virtual. April 20th, there was a rural forum meeting. That was virtual. So my role on the standing committee, I have made sure that there has been no cost to the town. The other thing that I have done, and I know you have all received the same email that I received, but I will just state it for the record, that when they gave out the list of the Board of Directors meetings, I went through the list to see what would possibly be doable if I wanted to put my name forward. So they've already had a meeting for March in 2023. That's over. They have the next meeting in May, will be virtual. Another meeting in September 5th to the 8th, that will be virtual. They have a meeting listed for September 12th, and that meeting would be a 2-day meeting, Northwest Territories. I would not go to that because that is too costly for 2 days. And then their next meeting is November 20th, 24th to Advocacy Days, and I have seen no information on what that is, if there's hybrid or not. And then it goes into 2024 and starts in February, and that would be virtual as well. So that's what I can give you right now for my ask, if I get picked. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Huntley. So based on your request to the council, the Federation has a very specific resolution that must be read. Councillor Zabian, I see your, but until we get the motion on, okay. So the resolution is as follows. Whereas the Federation of Canadian Municipality, FCM, represents the interest of members municipalities on policy and program matters that fall within federal jurisdiction. Whereas FCM Board of Directors is comprised of elected municipal officials from all regions and sizes of communities to form a broad base of support and provide FCM with united voice required to carry the municipal message to the federal government, and whereas FCM's annual general meeting, AGM, will be held in conjunction with the annual conference and trade show, May 25th to May 28, 2023, followed by the election of FCM's Board of Directors. Be it resolved that Council of the Town of Kentville endorse Councillor Paula Huntley to stand for election on the FCM's Board of Directors for a period starting in May of 2023 and ending in June of 2024. And be it further resolved that Council assumes all costs associated with Councillor Paula Huntley attending FCM Board of Director meetings. If someone could move that, please. Councillor Huntley, thank you. And the second? I'll second it. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. It has been moved and seconded that Council approve the FCM resolution. Is there any discussion on this matter? Councillor Zabian.
Thank you. So I guess my question or my comment would be, that's great if Councillor Huntley wants to be part of that. I don't have a problem with that. And from what she said, she wasn't going to take the trips, I think, if I interpret it that way. And I know that resolution has to be made for FCM, correct? The one that you just...
That's correct.
So could we make another motion as a council somehow that we're not going to incur the cost, just so that we have that? So FCM will get that one, but then we've agreed not to pay any additional costs as a council. I just think, you know, and I appreciate her enthusiasm with it. I just think that we should kind of mind our money spending a little bit, and if we can come to an agreement on that, then I don't have a problem if she wants to be on the board, but as long as we're not gonna foot the bill, or the taxpayers rather, it's not me alone, but that would be my suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship. So just a couple of things on that. I think, and it might be helpful if Councillor Huntley talks a little bit about sort of the benefits of being on the board of directors. I know, I'm trying to think of the gentleman now who's on it that she would.
Jeff Stewart.
Jeff Stewart,
He
right, in
becomes-
Colchester.
He becomes our president.
Right.
This time around.
Right, so I guess through the chair, or if the chair, or if you wish to comment on what some of those advantages are. So that's part one. Part two, and while I appreciate what Councillor Zabian's saying, I don't know that we can not amend the motion, but make a subsequent motion to establish that we can't pay anything towards those costs, because there might be the odd cost, who knows? I don't know for sure, but I think if we made that motion, then there would be none that the councillor could claim.
Thank you,
So,
thank you,
sorry,
Deputy Mayor.
that's two in one.
The MGA is very clear that there is allocation for expenses made in direct support of the town and the council. So, so that's in the MGA. It's also in our policy. So to make that motion would actually be an illegal motion because it would go against both the MGA and the policy.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and Councillor Huntley, did you wish to say why, what advantages you see? And Councillor York, I have you on that. Please, go ahead.
Thank you. I think for myself, excuse me, it's important to have representation for the town of Kentville at these meetings. And why I say that is because, you know, virtual is great, but the meetings are so large and they have so many meetings off to one another, like there's 20 rooms there and there could be 20 meetings going on. So you can't really take those virtually. That's one learnings that I get from it. The second is to be able to sit at a table with other people who have done something in their town that say that we're talking about right now that I could learn from. Those are the other things that I like to do, a takeaway when I'm at a meeting. When it comes to a board of directors meeting, yes, I'd love to put my name in the hat. That's not to say I'm going to get it, but putting my name forward is I get the opportunity to meet lots of mayors. They also invite in government officials. And if I have questions, if there's something that I feel that is pertinent to not just Nova Scotia municipality, but all across Canada, we get a voice in that. And I think that's important for us to play a piece in. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor York.
Thank you. The appointment, so assuming that you put your name forward, you get elected, or selected rather, or elected, I'm not sure how that works, elected. We're not increasing any individual councillor budgets, right? It would remain the same and we would still have to operate within our own confines, or
That's
like the maximum there. So the addition of this portfolio wouldn't increase your councillor budget at all. So does that give us that assurance that Councillor Zabian, and perhaps you can speak to it, you were looking for, that we don't exceed what's been allotted?
So I'm going to defer to the CAO here, particularly when we talk about allocation of councillor expenses.
Thank you. So just the allocation of councillor expenses, of course, each councillor has their own budget item, which they can spend up to the maximum of that. And whether you choose to spend a small amount or the entire amount is a councillor decision. Council itself, of course, also has the ability, should they wish, to look at, under administration, there is a conferences pool, which is often used by staff, but what you probably noticed over the years is COVID and coming out of COVID, actually, that's not an item that's been exhausted. So there is, if council ever had a specific request from anybody around this table to attend a conference that was outside of your allocation, you could make that request to council. But again, it's a decision at that point in time on where you want to go. So I think to Councillor York's comment is that every councillor here has a budget and you can spend up to that budget. And what I understand here is what Councillor Huntley is saying is she is planning on doing the various things as a councillor from when it comes to conferences within that budget.
Councillor Zabian.
Thank you. And I questioned this in the fall too. This motion that you read earlier, Mayor Snow, is gonna be a legal motion. Whether it's for FCM or for us, it's legal, and maybe we could ask the solicitor. That, I think, would trump our budget if it had to be, correct? I'd like an answer to that. So sorry, just to clarify, if our budgets say are $3,000 a year, $3,500 per councillor, and if any of us we're on FCM as a director, and say we had maxed out at $3,400, and these trips come up, we've got this motion here that just says that the town is gonna pay the cost. So I think that would trump whatever is in our budget pool, right? When you read it, and I asked this in October too, and I don't think anybody answered me, but I did ask this in October. The same thing, it was the same kind of thing where we have a budget, as Councillor York said, but then at the same time, you have a legal motion here that says the town of Kentville is gonna incur the cost. So just maybe some clarity on that would be nice. Thank you.
CAO.
I guess, first of all, at a province travel, typically what would happen is that councillors would notify the CAO they were planning to do it and come up with an estimate. And so should a councillor be exceeding their budget, the CAO would inform them of that. Second, I guess as councillors, you hold each other accountable, you hold yourself accountable to citizens. And I think that a councillor who would potentially spend more money than their budget, I'm sure there would be implications on that with regards to what councillors would say to each other, what citizens might say. So it's been my experience that folks look at their budget and try to maintain their spending within that budget. And I believe what this motion is saying is that in order to put your name forward, councils must say that they would be willing to support a councillor going. How that happens within a council's budget, FCM is not going to get involved in that. So I know that's two kind of separate pieces, but I wouldn't say this is about trumping something. I would say that council is acknowledging that they have a councillor who wants to put their name forward, so do they agree with that? And then second, that every councillor has a budget to spend as they choose or not spend any if they choose, but that's a decision of the councillor.
Thank you, CAO. Councillor York.
Thank you. My interpretation or my understanding of the motion is that it is kindly saying, don't ever send us a bill to the FCM because we're not going to pay it.
That's correct.
So how the town of Kentville, it's obviously cleaned up, how the town of Kentville decides to get that money, be it from the councillor as an individual or from our own town coffers, it's up to us as a council. The motion is just saying, we will not come to you if we've got a bill that we can't pay.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship. Similar to what Councillor York was saying, but, you know, I remember, and I think I mentioned this at a council meeting before, that I don't remember which year it was. It might have been I think it was my third or fourth year. I think it was 2018, actually. And that year I had attended NSFM and I had attended FCM, both excellent conferences, which I took great learnings from. And then I asked the CAO about doing a course, the Executive Certificate in Local Government, which I did and found enormously helpful. But that had to come before council because it was over and above, but there was money for it, as the CAO outlined, and council was comfortable with me doing that. And so I see this as something similar to that, should it be over and above. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Zabian, I will tell you that you have spoken twice on this matter.
It's my last one, right?
It is.
Yeah, thank you. So I guess that would be my question. Or my question is gonna be, when you're on FCM, or when you do the travel for FCM, you're allocated extra money, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and what's that number again, 3,000?
That's
It's kind of
correct.
double almost what you're
Yeah.
allocated for, okay. The other thing is too, and I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, it would be really nice if anybody, and this is not exclusive to Councillor Huntley, if we're on these committees, to get a presentation, what the give back is, what the citizens are getting from this, because I can appreciate the time that anybody would put into this, but it's nice to know what we're getting out of it. I mean, that's a lot of money that could potentially be spent, and you know, there's mention of it in reports, but I haven't seen myself personally anything from it, and that would have been nice, maybe in advance of tonight. This came to us fairly, on fairly short notice, and it's very hard to, and I don't wanna use the word throwaway, to spend taxpayers' money on something when you don't know what the return of the investment is. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so just for clarity's sake, because this motion or this resolution goes through council does not necessarily mean that Councillor Huntley is on the FCM board. What this does is that it permits her to submit her name to the Nova Scotia caucus. So she would become one of the members of Nova Scotia. So currently, we have Deputy Mayor Jeff, I just lost this, Jeff Stewart, just lost his name, Jeff, sorry about that. He is actually first vice president, so he will move into to the presidency. However, he's not counted for Nova Scotia because he is one of the table officers. We have the current president of the NSFM, Mayor Brenda Chisholm-Beaton. We have Mayor Christine Blair from Colchester and Mayor David Mitchell from Bridgewater as our members of the Nova Scotia caucus. So they all fall off of the edge this year. They don't all fall off the edge, but a couple of them do, so that is where this opening is coming from. However, we are not the only municipality submitting a name to the caucus. So if there's no further discussion, I will call the question. And the question is that council approve the FCM resolution as provided. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed, and the motion is carried. We have no correspondence this evening, and I do invite citizens to public comment. Please provide your name and your address. You have 3 minutes, and we will ask that you maintain comments with items that are currently before council. All right, no takers. So the council has an item concerning personnel which must be conducted in a closed session. We require a motion to go into the closed session to discuss the agenda item, and we will not be returning to YouTube for completion of the meeting or adjournment. So the motion is to move into a closed session to discuss the agenda item. Councillor York, Councillor Zabian, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that council move into the closed session. The question is on adoption of the motion to move into the closed session. All those in favor? Those opposed? The motion is carried, and the time is 7:18. Council, if you need to take a biological break or to refill your glasses, please do. Back in 10 minutes, please.